minutes.
Sure. No problem.
খালি মন মতো করে লিখবে, এটা টার্ম আছে না, টার্মটা কি সেটা বলো।
Welcome everyone to the paper presentation session on cross-cutting issues of the Bay of Bengal Economic Dialogue. We are immensely glad that Dr. Ahsan H. Mansoor, Executive Director, Policy Research Institute of Bangladesh, Dhaka, will grace the session as a chair, and Dr. Monish Hussein, Research Director, Bangladesh Institute of Development Studies, Dhaka, will join us in this session as discussants. Along with us, we have three paper presenters. Ms. Oratrika Dev, student, Symbiosis International University, India. Dr. Harushikesh Mullik, Associate Professor, CDS, India. Dr. Muhammad Hafiz Iqbal, Assistant Professor of Economics, Government Edward College, Pabna, Bangladesh. First, few housekeeping rules to ensure a smooth delivery of the conference session. To make a comment or ask a question, please use the chat box or use the raise hand option. Please mention to whom your question is directed to and mention your name and designation. The chair may read out your question or ask you to deliver your remarks during the open discussion session. Also, I'd like to request the paper presenters to keep their video on. Participants are requested to mute their audio and turn off their video during the session. With that, I'd like to welcome our Honorable Chair. Over to you, Honorable Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for your introduction, brief and precise. Let me first welcome you all to this session. And as mentioned by our introductor, that this is a cross-cutting session. So it has lots of very different things in there. And let me also welcome our paper presenters. And I will not waste much time because we have 3 papers to cover and also like to hear from the audience. So I would straight away request the paper presenters to make their presentations. each presenter can take perhaps about 10 minutes or a little less, preferably, so that we can finish it in the first half of the hour, and by 11:30 or so. And then Dr. Manzoor can speak for about 5 to 7 minutes about his observations, and then we open up the floor for discussion. So let's try to proceed on that basis. May I now request our young colleague from India, who has just who is going to make the first presentation on the determinants of I think the trends in the inflow of FDI in India, Ms. Aratrika Deb. You have 10 minutes, please.
Is my screen visible?
Yes, you can see some.
Yes. So, good morning, respected Chair, Dr. Ehsan Mansoor, respected discussant, Dr. Manzoor Hussain, and my fellow esteemed presenters and all the participants of the Bay of Bengal Economic Dialogue 2021.
Ms. Deb, it would be great if you could be a bit louder. We could hear you well.
Am I audible now?
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
it's
much
better.
Okay, thank you. I am Aratrika Deb, pursuing my master's in economics at the Symbiosis International University, India. And I feel thankful and honored to Sanim for giving me this opportunity to present the paper in such a global platform. And I hope I'm able to deliver my best. So the topic I'm about to discuss is the trends and the way forward in the inflow of foreign direct investment in India. And the other contributor to this paper is my fellow peer from the same university, Ms. Swati Verma. So, like many other nations, India suffered economically with the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. However, given India's potential as an economic superpower in the region, economists are hopeful with the newfound confidence and trust that has shifted from China to India. Moreover, in the recently announced Atmanirbhar Bharat scheme, the introduction of multiple FDI-related reforms, such as the increase in investments in various manufacturing sectors, funding to increase agricultural infrastructure, extensive support to the MSME units and other large business units, etc., is indicative of the liberal intent of the government in this context. Further, the schemes that have been designed with the objective of creating scale and size with vertically integrated units in the Indian manufacturing sector to strengthen its position as a more credible alternative to China as far as the FDA and cross-border trade goes. Moving on to the literature review. Even in such a difficult time, Mehta predicts a silver lining for India amidst the wake of such an outbreak. Due to the global supply shock created by the pandemic and the resulting lockdown in China, several countries have become keen to relocate their global supply chains and diversify production from one single country to the other countries with a young and abundant labor force. India, being one of the world's largest economies, is competing to be a worthy alternative for global business intending to move some of their investments and manufacturing bases out of one single country. A country with such thriving e-commerce platforms and other application-based service economies, Ray opines that India has a scope to enhance more cloud-based services to enter the service of online video conferencing. In such uncertainty, the global geopolitics might take a new turn as the global investors will now look for safer destinations like India and other Asian countries, but the pandemic has been expected to be under control and would thus be the next big destination of such Western investments. Saha and Bhomik, along with agreeing to the above statements, mentioned that what is, however, needed to be ensured is that the attractiveness to business should not only be improved by financial incentives, but the state governments should also invest in achieving sustainable development goals, which will further create enabling conditions for the environment. Adding to the statements, Goyal and his peers stated that India is one of the top 100 clubs on the ease of doing business and all-around positioning in top 10 greenfield FDI situations. Now coming to the objective and the research questions that we have posed, our concerned study aims to empirically examine the trends of the foreign direct investment inflows in India during and post-COVID period. And the research questions we have asked are, what factors will affect India's foreign direct investment inflows in the post-COVID era? And are there any sustainable policy recommendations possible to maintain sustained FDI inflows into the country? So moving on to the data and methods used, the study is purely based on the secondary data. The required data has been collected from the given sources as given on the screen, such as the Reserve Bank of India, the World Investment Report, Department of Economic Affairs, Government of India, Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, Government of India, India Brand Equity Foundation, etc. The analysis of this study will be a projective research from which insights through a time series regression framework will be obtained. The timeline considered here is from 1990 till 2019. On the basis of currently existing data, a projection may be made regarding the future and policies may be suggested accordingly. A tentative regression will be as follows, where the net inflow of foreign direct investment depends on the GDP, inflation rate, trade openness, the total labor force participation rate, and finally, the gross capital formation of the country, India in this case. So after running the model with various permutations and combinations, these are the key findings that I would like to address. So the two most important determinants that influence the inflow of foreign direct investment in India are the gross capital formation and the labor force participation rate. Now, including gross domestic product and trade openness led to significant variance in the model in the form of heteroscedasticity and multicollinearity from the very high value of the variance inflation factor, thereby affecting the precision and accuracy of the model. Inflation rate in this model acts more like a support in making it significant rather than being an influencing determinant. The model is significantly a good fit of approximately 88%, and a long run and short run causality will help identify the variables that need to be focused upon for future policy decisions. So now let us touch upon some of the most important policy recommendations that need to be addressed. So there should be an improvement in the ease of doing business. There should be an increase in the manufacturing base and creation of employment for better production. As we realize that labor force participation rate is a very significant determinant in the inflow of FDI in India. So improving and increasing the domestic manufacturing base will help in the creation of employment and hence raise the level and speed of production. The smooth operation of all modes of communication and trade, which includes telecommunication, ICTs, transportation, including waterways, roadways, airways, etc. A strong social policy with stringent law and order. And finally, swiftness and rapidity in various paperworks. As we approach to the end of the presentation, I would hence like to give a few remarks on the same. Since the snag in the time series is because of the COVID-19 pandemic, it is currently difficult to predict with the past data what will happen 5 to 10 years down the line. However, a significant amount of literature predicts a silver lining for India amidst the wake of such an outbreak. With the introduction to initiatives like Make in India and schemes like Atmanirbhar Bharat, India is expected to face a boost in their inflows. On 24 January 21, UNCTAD reported that India saw FDI rising by 13% to 57 billion US dollars as investment in the digital economy continued, particularly through acquisitions. The IMF recently projected an 11.5% growth rate for India in 2021, the only double-digit GDP by an economy, thus regaining its position as one of the fast-growing economies in the world. Thus, on these positive notes, I would like to end my presentation. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Thank you, Ms. Deb. Very precise and very quick. We are ahead of time, perhaps by 1 minute. Let's finish our agenda first, and then we go to the collaboration. I have one or two observations on your discussion. I must say that I've been following the FDI situation between countries just to observe that China is still the world leader at 160 plus billion this year. I mean, in the same 2019, in which India was 57 billion. So there is a huge catching up to be done on that front. Yes, the structural shift that we have been talking about Even during the COVID, we were surprised that it didn't really happen. Both China and India gained, but China gained more. so it's still to be seen to what extent it's rhetoric, to what extent it's substance. Whether people are still, investors are still going for a sure bet, given that China has established itself, well entrenched and so on, or they will go for new areas, including India, Bangladesh, or Myanmar, or other countries where there are unknown risks that they may have perceived. Secondly, I'll come to that, but I'll come later on the other issues. That is the legal aspect of it. There are certain issues which are complicating Indian influence today, as of now, including legal challenges, arbitration, international, and the Indian court system not honoring those of the government, not respecting the international arbitration issues. So those are also important issues for the market. Anyway, let me now welcome our second speaker. Once again, he's from India, Mr. Malik. It's also it's related to the foreign external sector issues, the determinants of current account performance of India and South Asian countries. So, Mr. Malik, please go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. At the outset, I'd like to thank the organizer of this SANEM conference on Bengal economic issues discussion forum. So my topic is on my topic is on what explains the current account performance of selected South Asian economies. This is an empirical investigation considering only 5 countries. So what is the basic motivation, underlying motivation of this analysis? Why not 5? Why not 8? Why only 5? So it is I shall come later. But basic motivation is that we are all the time debating about economic integration within different regions, and promotion of trade, economic ties, and also so much so thing. But then actually, before actually integrating the economies, we also take into consideration of actually the political context, and also the predominant concern is the economic aspect. So there are a lot of economic parameters we take into account, like the current account deficit and also fiscal deficit. So how the countries are performing in different parameters also, that is also quite important. So so before integrating the economies, we talk about actually a lot of actually important factors. So in view of the fact that most of the South Asian countries are experiencing negative balances in their current account deficits, so the present study is aiming at investigating the factors which induces imbalances. There are a lot of actually studies in other countries' context, but there are actually no actually studies actually looking into only this South Asian countries. So a crucial segment of open economic literature suggests that a sustainable rise in higher current account deficit often can result in disruptive economic situations and resulting in sudden stops in capital flows and destabilizing the economy. Okay. So, so sometimes it results in capital reversal of the economies from developing instead of actually the capital coming into developing countries. It can also, if there is crisis facing the developing countries, so it can actually capital can flow to actually to other countries, other countries. So severe decrease in credit crunch and spending, and essentially misalignment. Okay, essentially misalignment, not in correspondence with the other movement of other economic parameters. So this in turn can generate a high unemployment and also poverty and also accumulation of foreign liabilities. So and also you might have seen that actually various so how actually trade can be promoted actually across from the developing countries. It is with the developed countries. So in the context that actually the developed countries, if they put a lot of barriers and all that, so some countries they are inviting actually to trade. Some countries are some countries are inviting the developed countries actually to trade with favorable terms. But some countries are putting the restrictions in terms of increasing the tariffs and other things. Okay, so in such context, maybe actually also regional cooperation within the actually Asian economies actually also seems quite important. So since actually my focus is on understanding the factors that has led to actually current account deficits or current account imbalances. So just actually coming into the issue. So let me actually show the in this diagram. So the movement of current account to actually balances. So if you see that actually the historically there are all these 5 countries: Bangladesh, India, Nepal, Pakistan, Sri Lanka. They have been experiencing current account deficits. There is negative. You can see the negative balances. But actually, but fortunately, in recent years, only from 2002 onwards, you will see that only 2 countries they are producing actually current account the current account surpluses. Okay, because it is positive, the balance is positive. But later actually it's dipping again. Actually, in recent years, there is a dipping. So there is actually. So I try to actually since there are no studies available in this context, I try to examine what actually what are the factors underlying the factors actually that could explain such actually such volatility in such volatility in current account balances. So if you look at the average trade openness measured in terms of exports plus imports of the goods and services as a percentage of GDP, there has been also declining over the years after reaching its peak level of 48.28% in 2008, and later actually it has reached to 41 point. So there has been actually declining on the one side, and if you see that exchange rate in terms of exchange rate also has been depreciating on an average. You will see that when we take actually exchange rate in terms of actually a representative currency, that is US dollar. So you'll see that for these 5 countries, the average value of these currencies was 40.19 per US dollar in 19 somewhere I cannot see. So it has actually it has reached to the level of 1.60 US per US dollar in 2017-18. So the question that the theoretically actually the theoretically prediction is that when there is exchange countries engage in exchange rate depreciation, it should lead actually positive impact on their actually on current account balances. So that means actually if there is any current account deficits, it should result in actually it should work positively. Okay, so but actually on the one hand there is a current account deficit is increasing in recent years. Current account deficit is increasing on the one hand, and exchange rate is actually also depreciating actually depreciating in a faster rate. So therefore actually so it is important to understand what is the relationship between the exchange rate and also the trade. So there are also other factors like foreign direct investment, because foreign direct investment enables actually the countries to actually receive capital in context of developing countries when there is scarcity for resources. Okay, so therefore actually so when foreign direct investment flows in actually, so it brings the technology and it makes the domestic sector more competitive, and also it results in actually it improves the export potential of actually these countries. So therefore I have included also foreign direct investment. But most importantly also literatures also look into actually they try to relate fiscal deficit with actually the current account balance, because when there is an increase in fiscal deficit in countries, which is the case actually in many actually out of these 5 countries, you will see that fiscal deficit is also higher like Indian and Pakistan and context. Okay, so increase in fiscal deficit actually so that it will bring actually, it will produce actually aggregate more, it will add to aggregate demand, and thereby prices will be moving up. When prices will be moving up actually in countries, the developing countries that cannot compete with the international context, so therefore it will hurt the exports. So therefore actually fiscal deficit is one of the actually crucial. There are also other ways also it can affect also positively, but also it can also adversely actually affect there as a current account balances by actually adversely affecting the current account, by adversely affecting their actually exports. So in this context, I have specified this actually, the basic model. So current account deficit is a function of exchange rate and domestic prices to actually foreign prices, the relative price ratios, and there's external debt and FDI foreign direct investment inflows and fiscal deficit, trade openness, and per capita GDP is a demand factor, and financial development. Financial development means actually more foreign direct investment will be coming up, and there will be actually more financial developments, greater resource allocation capacity into productive areas, and enabling to actually for more exports and other things, and also institutional development also matters. Okay, so this is one specification. Another context actually, just I replaced actually the fiscal deficit as well as also financial development with the gross domestic savings, because when there is gross domestic, when there is greater savings means it will actually it should have positive implications for the current account positions of countries. Okay, so I'm not going into the theoretical things. So just a minute. Okay, so theoretical linkage, because there is no time. So this is actually the I have taken actually the data sources from various actually country sources as well as also World Bank and other IMF sources, exchange rate and other things. This is actually what I have done is that by finding prior to actually doing prior to conducting actually the any econometric methodology, sophisticated methodology, we conduct actually unit root test. So unit root test suggests that actually most of the actually variables, some of the mostly the variables are found to be non-stationary, but they are found to be stationary at the first differences. But as some of the variables actually they are actually found, they are actually mixed. They reported mixed results. Some techniques they reported that it's there is stationary at the level, and some reported actually only it's stationary at the differences. So there is actually mixed signal. So in such context, actually there is such a technique that is called Airedale model that is basically applied to time series. But here actually I have applied. Also, this is also being applied largely applied into the panel context. That's actually called actually PMG model, pooled mean group model, group estimator. So this is actually basically this is the long-term equation. This is concerning long-term equation. Y is actually your current account deficit, and other things is a function of the lagged dependent variable, and other the factor of variables. X is the vector variable. This is the short run actually equation where you will see that the equation is in different terms. So it will actually capture the long-term equation, long-term relationship. This will accept the differences will reflect the short-term relationship. Okay. So this actually why this actually methodology. So it's basically the methodology will enable actually that what holds, assuming it assumes that in the long run, so parameters to be actually homogeneous, but in short term actually it will be actually variable across actually the cross sections of the cross section or individual countries. Okay, so that is the importance of actually there is an importance of actually this methodology. Okay, other methodologies actually they assume actually they actually take actually extreme assumption, they have a technique, but it is a intermediate technique which actually balances actually both. I'm not going into much details of
it would be great if you could finish in 2 minutes. That would be great.
Oh, okay, yes. Yes. So prior to that, I conducted a Granger causality. It suggests that there is some sort of relationship. You can see that there is a with the current account deficit. So, but since there is a it only in the two-way context, but actually then there might be actually when there is we establish the causality in two variables, but there might be third factor. So therefore, it requires for a proper understanding of the thing, whole perspective. So you need to actually estimate in a three, more than actually multiple variable approach. So this is actually this is the long-term coefficient parameters estimates that I obtained. One is these two columns, it's without actually the gross domestic savings, but it is with the fiscal deficit and the financial financial sector development. But these actually the last two columns are actually only by replacing actually those two variables.
Sir.
Domestic savings, you can see that. Sorry, see this result, it shows that essence rate depreciation it helps essence rate depreciation it helps the countries in terms of actually maintaining current account balances. Okay, because it reduces the current account deficits. You can see that consistently, and then actually the per capita income it is having demand pressure, because when with increased per capita GDP, so it is leading actually putting actually it's worsening the current account balance of these countries. But trade openness is actually sometimes trade openness also turn out to be significant. So
Dear presenter, your time is over.
Please come to the conclusion very quickly so that we can.
Okay, so trade openness is leading to actually greater current account deficits. So these are two crucial actually findings: exchange rate and also trade. And of course, the demand factor is consistent with the theoretical predictions. So this is actually cross country. This is short run relationship. I am not going into it in view of the time constraint. So that's the key observation. In long run, the exchange rate depreciation by promoting exports from these countries might be helping them to squeeze their current account deficit as a percent to GDP. Although the exchange rate depreciation is significantly adding to reduce current account deficit, however, trade openness is resulting in greater actually current account deficit. Okay, so per capita GDP is having positive relations with the current account deficit. Fiscal deficit did not turn out to be having any significant effect. But in short run, actually, what is happening? That actually country context actually differs. Actually, sometimes exchange rate is actually helping certain countries to promote exports, but actually not in context of India and Pakistan. So it is rather it is producing actually deficit. deficit, current account deficits. So and GDS, when we talk about GDS in the over long run, actually it's found to be having contradictory relationship. Instead of reducing the current account deficit, it is having actually current account, it's a positive impact on current account deficit. Means it's worsening the current account balance of the countries. But in the short run, you can see that in the short run, the GDS gross domestic savings is having a positive impact on the current account position. So with this, I thank you. I thank all of you. So I'm looking forward to your comments and suggestions.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm surprised that the fiscal issue didn't come up significant in this analysis, but we also know that one of the underlying reasons for exchange rate instability is the high fiscal deficit. And Pakistan and India is case in point, because both India has a high general government fiscal deficit of about 8-9%, general government, not the federal government. And Pakistan also has a very high fiscal deficit, which leads to pressure on the balance of payment down the line because of domestic demand. And then exchange rate becomes unstable. Exchange rate cannot do the job in an unstable macro environment created by inadequate fiscal management. So that's one of my observations, but we'll come back with our when comments will be given on this. Finally, we have the last speaker from Bangladesh, from our Edward College, Mr. Hafiz Iqbal, and he will be talking on a very different topic about our favorite Sundarban. So let's hear from him the economics of protecting Sundarban, which is so much close to our heart. Mr. Iqbal. Hello. Yes, Mr. Hafiz Iqbal, can you hear me? Hello.
Dr. Iqbal, you will have to unmute yourself.
Dr. Iqbal, you are muted right now. Kindly unmute yourself.
And make the camera adjusted so that we can see you better.
Sir, you hear me, sir?
Yes, we can hear you now, but yeah, make yourself a little bit more.
So,
yeah, please go ahead. Please go ahead, because we have a very short time.
Thank you very much, sir, to give me the time to present our paper. Our paper titled "Recreation and Conservation Value of Sundarban Mangrove Forest in Bangladesh: Approach of Contingent Valuation." I am Dr. M.D. Hafiz Iqbal, along with my sir, Professor M.D. Ilyas Hussain from Russia University. Okay.
Please.
Okay. Actually, the density of forest, ecological affluency can enhance tourist recreation, and Sundarban mangrove forest has immense recreational value due to its diverse flora and fauna and the ecological services. But the vulnerable position of not only in Sundarban, any forest actually not effectively increase the attraction of the tourist. That's why just if we degrade if we see the degradation of the Sundarban, of course, it may be we may be loss the potential tourist in future. And not only that, the tourists also have some sort of the responsibility to protect the Sundarban for their further recreation and the ecological balance and the greenhouse gas emission and reduce the other vulnerabilities. Okay. Now, what are our objective? Our aim is to investigate the non-market valuation of the recreational attributes of Sundarban through the willingness to pay, which is essential to conservation of the Sundarban. But why we consider these issues, the non-market issue, especially tourist perception and their WTP can play an important role to design, develop, and implement our proposed attributes for higher recreational recreation derived from the Sundarbans. Okay, and we consider few literature regarding the recreation and the mangrove forest worldwide, and reputed journal we only consider first. Actually, the payment-based tourism is one of the best ways to achieve the sustainable sustainability in the conservation of the Sundarbans, and sometimes the socio-economic and demographic characteristics may change the tourist attitude toward the conservation of Sundarbans. Okay, and then the creation of resource-based provision of the alternative livelihood options and the provision of ecotourism can improve the conservation of the Sundarbans, and contingent valuation-based estimation of WTP for the conservation fee is essential for the conservation of Matalang mangrove forest in Park of Malaysia. It is the different country perspective case. And of course, some studies use the dichotomous or the discrete choice approach. And actually, this is guided by the NOAA. NOAA stands for the National and Atmospheric Institution, and it's especially the US based. Okay. And the CB based estimation of WTP for the conservation fee is essential for the conservation. Okay, and this sort of issues just we find, but what are the gap we also detect here? The economic valuation, no previous literature not considered the economic valuation of the recreational and the conservational attributes of the Sundarban mangrove forest. And that this is the technical framework. Especially the contingent valuation can be viewed as a way of estimating the change in the expenditure function or the change in the indirect utility function. It is suitable for the SP data. SP data here means the stated preference data. And we know the SP data is basically focused on the hypothetical scenario and basically cover the hypothetical issue. And here we consider the SP data because no WTP based scenario is exist in the or the related to the Sundarban. And our goal of estimation of the parameters from the dichotomous choice derived from the contingent valuation respond to SP data is essential for measuring the WTP. Of course, the respondent the travelers are willing to pay for the better Sundarban mangrove forest over here. And of course, in that perspective, they maximize their utility. And if we consider the probability or something like that in the empirical assessment, of course, it also enhances the probability, utility of probability, of course. And now you can ask especially the audience, ask me why we not consider the travel cost method, but travel cost is only focused on the reveal preference data, not the SP related data. And here is the research plan. Actually, we conducted 3 FZDs, which is occurred on 11 to 13 May 2015 in Karamjal, Heron Point, and the Kotka. And we over here we only considered make the base price actually. And selection the attributes, and later based on the findings of the 3 FZDs, we developed the questionnaire, and this questionnaire has four sections. So first section is cover only the how to say the socio-economic information. Second is cover the WTP related scenario. Third is cover the existing or the status quo scenario, and the fourth section was covered only the what are the amount they would like to pay. Okay, and we also conduct the T-test, which is occurred in the 17 May 2015 in Karamjal tourist spot, and only 15 participants participated over there. And lastly, we conduct a survey at 7 tourist spot at Karamjal, Kotka, Tiger Point, Jamtola, and the other renowned tourist spot and the convenient tourist spot. And based on this survey, we conduct the double hurdle or the Craig models. And so, of course, double hurdle and Craig model has the two parts. First part is very convenient to the probit model, and it is also considered only the binary option. And based on the probit model, we can also estimate the marginal effect. And if the respondent agree to pay for certain amount of money for better Sundarban mangrove forest, we also run the truncated model. And over here, only 170 participants agree to pay for the certain amount of money for the better mangrove Sundarban mangrove. And here is the brief description of the statistics from the endogenous variable for the all samples. So here, maximum age cover is 71 and the minimum is 15. And the monthly income, travel cost, education, willingness to pay maximum is 30 and the minimum is 10. Just based on the you get the respondent response and the distance here. And this is the regression result. Of course, you see due to the limited space, it is not possible to highlight all the things very largely. Okay, but we consider the ecotourism. Then the red plus stands for the reduction emission from deforestation and forest degradation. And third thing is the bioconservation corridor. Bioconservation corridor is basically this no man's type forest where two countries has the right like in Sundarban. Of course, it is part of the India and it is also part in the Bangladesh. And of course, we can introduce the bioconservation corridor and the payment option. These are these four are the hypothetical attributes which is very develop our Sundarban mangrove forest. And lastly, the result for the WTP, of course, the lower payment just only 10 taka and the upper payment only the 30 taka. Of course, we can easily calculate figure out the lower payment and the upper payment based on the survey. And of course, the lower payment of the proposed attributes of Sundarban doesn't necessarily imply a low demand for the recreational and the conservational attributes. Just our message is very clear. Okay, just if the government and the monitoring agency or the controlling agency just incorporate the WTP base visit, our Sundarban will be protected for better conservation, for better future generation also, and it can also enhance the greenhouse gas emission or something like that. And this is the conclusion part. Due to the time limited, we are not supposed to discuss a lot, but it has scope to discuss the lot issue, particular this issue. But due to the time limited, we are very limited. Consider the very limited points over here. Especially the study findings can serve as a policy inputs not only for the Sundarban but also pave the way of undertaking projects like biodiversity control management to mitigate extinction of the species in red alert. And based on our findings based on especially our estimated result, a large number of surveyed respondents are highly concerned about the conservation of the recreational activity of Sundarbans, and they have deeply expressed their interest to pay for further preservation of this forest through the provision of conservation of ecotourism, RED+, and biodiversity corridors. And set characteristics like the socio-economic and demographic characteristics like age, distance, awareness program, monthly income, these sort of activities especially covers actually, along with other characteristics as the distance of participant respondents and travel costs are found to be important contributors to WTP. That means the willingness to pay. And our suggestion, any policy aiming to undertake conservation of Sundarban mangrove is needed to take into consideration these set characteristics for enhancing the recreational value. Thank you. That's all. And any question and comments will be highly appreciable. Thank you. Thank you very much again.
Thank you very much. I think we will come back with comments later. Let me now request Dr. Monish Hussein, Research Director, BIDS, to make his observations on the three papers, and then we can open the floor.
Okay, thank you, Chair. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers, the presenters for their nice presentation and participants. So it's a great pleasure for me to be here and to hear some nice presentations from the young minds. Basically, what I would do, I will try to give you some comprehensive comments so that you can improve your paper for further publication or other things. So first of all, I want to start with the FDA info paper. The paper, I didn't see any analysis, first of all, because as you are a master's student, I would like to see your results from the regression analysis and others so that I could comment a bit better way. But what strikes me, your only two variable gross capital formation and labor force participation you have found significant for India's FDA attraction. I think nothing new you have found because your title was about the COVID impact on others, but you haven't shown anything. If you could not, then you should change your title first of all. But one of my suggestion that if you could find out some shock variable even in the past and see how it affects the FDI of other countries in a two-country model or something, if you could do, then I think it would be a good contribution to the literature. Otherwise, I think this is a very conventional paper. You will be tested very severely by the referees and others. Even though within the model, I think there is a possibility to improve your paper in a sense that you should include some institutional variable, governance variable that even we have done in our paper in the previous time. So these type of things are important for improving this paper. I hope that you would be able to improve the paper in that direction. Then I want to come back to, another one is that your policy recommendation, I think it was not evidence-based. You have drawn up on some issues that are not related to your findings. So it is important to relate your findings with the policy conclusion. Okay. The next paper is about the capital account, current account deficits and related determinants. I think the papers and models are more comprehensive, but still I see some loopholes in the analysis. Your main finding is that exchange rate depreciation improves the current account deficits. What is the new in this? If you look at the Marshall-Lerner condition, this is the findings. So I think this is not a very exciting finding that I would wanted to see. So another one is that maybe you could have tried to add real exchange rate or real effective exchange rate. You can see in that way. If you look at the thread, and as our chair said, I was very surprised the fiscal deficit you did in significance. So it's very surprising. You will see that a lot of papers that deal with the fiscal deficit and current account balance. So I don't know, maybe you have to check the data or you have to rerun the regressions or models. And for the robustness of the results, you should try different models. For example, I would suggest you to go for panel co-integration. Or even you need to do some threshold regression analysis, because you see that current account balance for the, up to certain levels sometimes is good, and then if it exceeds the certain level, then you will see different results. So this is also important. What I am trying to say that you have to come out with some new contribution or findings if you want to write a paper. In that sense, I am trying to give you some comments, and also I think you can add some other non-conventional variables like market capitalization, central bank autonomy, or other things, how these are contributing to the current account deficit and all these issues. At the same time, it is important to look into the structure of the economy of the specific countries in South Asia. You will see that Bangladesh situation may not be real, same with the Indian. So if you draw the conclusion based on different separate regression, then you have to also discuss separately the country context of the economies. But at the same time, what you haven't done, you could do a complete panel regression, combining all those data. Then that could give you some idea about how the South Asia as a whole have been doing, or is it good or bad, anything else. Third paper, in fact, it doesn't belong to the domain of my expertise or interest, but at least since I've agreed to discuss these papers, I will try to just highlight a few issues. First of all, how did you measure the contingent valuation of degradation or other things of the conservation issues? I think that's a very, controversial issues. It is very difficult, or I don't know, you have to explain very clearly about your valuation. And then the sample selection, willingness to pay based on what? That is the contingent valuation. So these two issues are important if you want to do. But as long as the methodology and other issues, I think that it is an interesting study. And the methods and topics are quite relevant for the study. But still, I wonder why you have done the study in 2015, but why haven't you published or worked on this paper until now? It is 2021. So before becoming the data outdated, I think it is better for you to work on this and try to publish somewhere. With all this, I want to finish here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Manzoor. Let's now open the floor for discussion. Do anybody who has any question, please feel free to raise it.
I think Somesh Mathur, he has some question. May I request Somesh to kindly, unmute and raise the question, please?
Thank you, Salim, and thank you, Chair. I'm from IIT Kanpur in India. I have posed the question in the chat box. The first question is, what explains this current account surplus in South Asia in last few years? Is it because of the global deceleration and rise of protectionism? Because what we have seen that in Pakistan after 17 years and in India, we have seen current account surplus happening. But this may be because of fall in GDP outside and the rise of protectionism. And I have two other questions for the two other speakers, but it all depends whether the chair allows me to pose those questions. I've put it in the chat box. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else who has any question? Then we can go back to the authors for a very quick and brief response, and then I can conclude with some few observations. Okay. Mr. Malik, maybe you have to answer the first question that.
Yes.
Mr. Mathur.
I thank the expert discussant, Dr. Manzoor. Yes, Professor. Yes, Manzoor Hussain, for giving a nice, comprehensive comments. But let me also clarify at the same time some point on certain actually things that that I have already incorporated and tried to incorporate in the paper, which perhaps because of time constraint I could not be able to clearly make out. So the point is that you suggested that to incorporate the real essence rate. I tried to actually, it is there in my specification. If you look at one side, I have taken essence, nominal essence rate, and then thereby also I have on the other side I have taken actually the price ratios. Thereby actually I have decomposed the real essence rate. Okay, so because real essence rate is a combination of factors. So one is price, another is nominal essence rate. So I wanted to make actually separate impact of actually both those components. So therefore it is there. It is implicit in the model. So rather it is explicit in the model. And then about fiscal, so you said that what is new there in this paper? Because it's very much it's there in as a theoretical prediction. Would lead to improve the current account balances of the countries. Okay, so but here actually the point is that I'm trying to distinguish between a short run and a long run. The short impact is different from a long run impact. Actually, by restricting the coefficient long, we are saying that there will be same kind of actually when the export is not counted, all the countries with their essence rate, they will try to count essence rate or something. Okay. So thereby, so in actually it will have actually there will be similar kind of actually responses. In the short run, when you look at individual countries, the response is quite different. As pointed out by the chair, when there is fiscal destability or greater fiscal deficit, it can destabilize the actually economy, and thereby exchange rate may have also some kind of actually impact there. So you will see that actually for certain countries like specifically India and Pakistan context, exchange rate from exchange depreciation is not helping them to actually achieve greater current account balance, but other countries context it is. So thereby I distinguish actually two. Actually, I distinguish long run impact from the short run impact in this paper by taking at that you suggested for co-integration, but co-integration is built into the model. I did not actually produce those results. That result. That is one thing. And the other suggestions I shall be actually the structural features of the economy is that I have done something, but I could not actually because of time constraint I could not be able to present. And some of the things that I tried to incorporate but actually turned out to be insignificant. For instance, actually the one comment it is about whether it's the rise of protectionism, that I have not taken into account, because it's, this multiple indicator. You have to construct the proper, actually, kind of a protection. Like, it's not just a simply tariff and the non-tariff. Non-tariff is actually working on non-tariff measures. It's quite a difficult thing. So I have not incorporated actually that. So maybe that one needs to actually, I have to think about that. When you talk about GDP, the global recession actually impacting the, actually, not helping these countries to promote the response in Southeast Asia. I try to actually, try to incorporate that, the global GDP. So global GDP. So that I try to incorporate.
If you can be very brief, because we have.
But I did not find any significant. Therefore, actually, I have incorporated the structure, that is the institutional features of these economies, but nothing actually found to be insignificant. Those things that I have kept aside, I did not actually present in this presentation. Thank you very much for your all comments, and thank you the chair, and thank you all the organizers.
Thank you. May I now request Mr. Dev for her response to the comments.
Yes, firstly, Dr. Hussain, thank you very much for giving such valuable suggestions. Indeed, your criticisms will definitely help enhance our research to a great extent. I have tried to produce this paper from a student's perspective, and of course, I'm in the learning process. So regarding your suggestions, I will obviously look into it, and I will come for your further suggestions in future if needed for the specifically for this paper. And regarding your suggestions for the shock variables, the after effects actually cannot be clearly measured right now because adequate time has not yet passed by, because it's the COVID pandemic. It is still on. Even the vaccines have been discovered, but infections are still prevailing and the lockdowns are still issued in various parts of the world. So from a time series viewpoint, I agree we cannot really measure these things. If we can, however, then those are the tools which I, as a student, am not aware of. As I said, I have more to learn. And for example, we can use the GTAP model, artificial intelligence, artificial neural networking, which is also a part of the AI. So we can utilize these models to find out the inflow, the trends in the inflow of FDI in India, and that will actually give us a very clear viewpoint towards our objectives. So we don't know enough of these models to make projections about what may happen right now, and there has been obviously a shortage of time as well. So to look at this from a retrospective manner, we surely have to look into more variables, more studies, and more literature to provide strong evidences to our papers. And of course, keeping your valuable suggestions in mind, we will progress with the paper further with the suggestions so that it becomes a fruitful research. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Iqbal, would you say something in response?
Okay, so thank you to give me such opportunity again. Of course, sir, I am really very grateful to the how to say, Dr. Monish Hussein sir for his good and significant suggestion and comments. Of course, the data was little bit old. In just we made a survey in 2015, but just this survey is based on the willingness to pay. Just if we look back or remember in our presentation, we only consider the only 10 taka, the lower limit and the upper is the only 30 taka. And this 10 taka and the 30 taka is based on we designed actually the FZD because we already conducted 3 FZDs, and I think this is not it's not creates the very big pressure, especially the financial pressure or something like that to the potential traveler or something like them. As a consequence, I think it is very convenient, and actually the CB based survey is very popular for valuing the non-market environmental goods through the WTP, followed by the estate preference data, and it was first introduced in 1980s and 1990s 90s decades, and this method was found in the used in the early in 1966 in the first Davis actually in the study of the conservation of one of the important forest in and the how to say the recreational value in the USA. Okay, and of course I think this is very convenient way. And of course, it will be very helpful just and it will be very significant if we incorporate the survey again. But due to the time constraint and the other academic business of other activities, academic activities, it is very difficult to conduct the further study in this field. Okay, but we try our level best to incorporate the other suggestion that the Monish Hussein sir raised in our paper. Thank you, sir. That's all.
Thank you very much. We have covered all three.
Chair, if you allow me, actually,
Sure.
I thought since you will be making the concluding remarks, but I actually wanted to add one particular question to you, if you can actually highlight that one during your concluding remarks, because we don't want to lose the opportunity to get your insights on this. In two of these papers, the issue of FDI actually came out very prominently, and especially in the case of India. And we all know that in South Asia, FDI, the lack of FDI and the positive FDI, and especially the kind of challenges, these are very prominent. And during this COVID time and in the future, it's a kind of uncertain. And also these countries taking different measures, whether these are very much, the question is whether these are consistent to attracting FDI. So what would be your opinion? And what do you foresee in the future that the prospect of attracting FDIs? Countries like Bangladesh is actually doing this SEZ, and India, Make in India, or Atmanirbhar India. Do you think actually these are very much in line with this kind of expectation? Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you. Well, let me just conclude very briefly. We can start with Salim's observation or query. You see, the experience that I can see as this is unfolding, we were hoping for a better response from foreign investors with regard to FDI flows in the during the COVID and post-COVID period. Post-COVID is yet to happen, so we have to limit ourselves in the during COVID period. But so far, India has limited success. I would say it's not a great success; it's a limited success. Pakistan has also some limited success in these last 2 years. Bangladesh has not. Bangladesh is declined, as a matter of fact. Despite our efforts are there. We have SEZs. India has lots of those SEZs in different states, and Indian central government is also promoting Maharashtra example to promote investment and FDI investment. But what we have seen acquisition more. If you look at this 57 billion, much of it, a large chunk of it is RIL, Reliance Industries Limited. About 24 plus billion is right there. So that didn't add any value to the job creation or anything to the Indian economy. It is just takeover or in the shares of the companies and all that. So it's a portfolio type investment more rather than in greenfield FDI kind that creates job and opportunities for people to participate in that process of bringing in new technology. Nothing of that sort is coming. If Saudi Aramco investing in RIL or a hedge fund investing in RIL, that does not add much value, in my view, to the company. Company itself is a good company. RIL is a fantastic company. I have nothing against it. But those investments in itself is not promoting any great activity in the economy. What we are saying also is that China is standing out. A lot of people were saying that, well, this is the end of China as the production house of the world. All these supply chain shocks has really destabilized. But I think even during this COVID time, the world depended on China for supplies, starting from PPEs to face masks to this. They have a 250-some billion face masks exported from China, 250 billion units. Imagine how large is the volume. So they are still doing good. And now the China is in holidays for their New Year. The whole world has a supply shock again because they cannot place the order. There's no order takers of orders in China now. They will reopen after end of February, and then they will start supplying again. Everything in Bangladesh has gone up. Why? I have asked why is this shampoo, these things? Sir, there is no order. There is no coming. Nothing is coming from China in the next 2 months, because they will start February, so it will come in April. So that is the situation that we are facing. We are still very, very dependent and very much still. The market is saying, the revealed preference is that the people probably trust confidence in their supply, in the reliability of their supplies, and timeliness of their supplies, and the capacity, huge capacity that they have. You cannot ignore it. It cannot be overtaken by somebody else very soon. So that's still a reality. How in the post-COVID period, how it would shape, there's a lot of talk about that. But as of now, the evidence is not that people are moving away from East Asia in general, either China or Vietnam or Indonesia. They are the primary beneficiaries, and Thailand. They are the primary beneficiaries of FDI as of now. I will make a few observations on the current account situation. We have seen one thing, and it gives me the confidence 100% that it's the current account surplus that we are seeing today is the result of the weakness of the economy. It has nothing to do with exchange rate or anything. India has seen a fantastic run of build-up of reserves to 580 billion as of last month. It will probably cross 600 billion anytime in this month. May have already crossed, I'm not sure. Bangladesh is also having similar kind of bull run on reserve, and both countries having much improved current account position. And why? Because import have collapsed. So it is the economic weakness that has contributed to this. Now, India is certainly, everybody is expecting, and it's going to have a very strong V-shaped recovery. IMF, World Bank, and Indian government and all other analysts are very much sanguine about it. Gopinath is she's very sanguine about it as well from the IMF. So 10.5% is the consensus estimate of recovery. That's a double-digit growth in the midst of a pandemic. You can say this, in the tail end of the pandemic, it's going to happen. So if that happens, it will have an impact on the current account. It will reverse the situation probably. Your reserve buildup will probably stop. You will go back to the traditional Indian situation where excess demand in the economy was creating a relatively large current account deficit and pressure on the exchange rate. If you compare that with Bangladesh, traditionally, if you look in your chart also, you will see Bangladesh had for a very significant period, since 2010 in particular, has current account surpluses, except for 1 year. And that is because primarily, in my view, it is the lower fiscal deficit in Bangladesh that has made the anchor for macro stability, and that is reflected in the current account position, external position, and also in the exchange rate, relative exchange rate stability for Bangladesh. We have seen how Indian rupee has depreciated against Bangladesh taka, and that's what contributed, the singular factor that contributed to the per capita GDP of Bangladesh in dollar terms exceeding India in 2020 was primarily because of the exchange rate factor, along with the sharp drop in Indian GDP. These two factors contributed to that. But that's going to change. India is going to have double-digit growth. India is going to have also no more depreciation, because they are buying dollar. RBI is buying dollar in large quantity just to prevent an appreciation of the Indian rupee. The Indian rupee has appreciated quite significantly from 77 or 76 to now 72. So there's a significant nominal appreciation as well. So this is going to continue, this behavior, until we see the curves changing from deficit to again surplus to again negative, reserve build-up stabilizing, and that's what the state situation would be. And that's when again the government fiscal management will kick in. As of now, at this point, government fiscal management, as we also proposed in Bangladesh context, that you can be a little bit lax on fiscal side because you have the scope for doing it. India also has the scope for doing it. You don't need to build up reserves to $1 trillion. Why? Building reserves for the sake of building is not the reason. So I think India has basically changed its position. This budget is quite a bit expansionary than the last budget, and the last stimulus package was not strong enough for India, and India paid some cost for not being too bold. But anyway, I think their position has changed, and they are now supporting growth, and India will have a fantastic growth next year, and that will be very important from our South Asian point of view. Finally, I would say that there is this Sundarban issue. This Sundarban issue is very close to my heart also, because I also worked with Indian ORF, and PRI worked on Sundarban as a common heritage issue. And we know that it's certain things that cannot be done and should not be done, like putting a border post in Sundarban. The animals should have should not need a passport to go and roam around Indian territory of Sundarban or Bangladesh territory of Sundarban. So there should be a border in place outside that common area, so that you don't disturb the migration issue. Secondly, I think in Bangladesh side, I have seen it definitely that there is very little respect for environmental values and other things. This very low admission fee, 10 taka, 30 taka, is not going to be a deterrent for huge inflow of influx of people going into there and really indiscriminately polluting the whole atmosphere in terms of sound, noise pollution. They take mics and music, loud music in the middle of Sundarban and blasting it away. This is not something that adds value to our ecosystem. And they're trashing anything and everything. In Indian side, the Sundarban is being taken over by homestays. It's being occupied. Much of the Sundarban in Indian side has been lost to homestays, and there is a need for urgent protection from that side also, because after all, it is for the well-being of both nations, and we should work together on that. We had arranged a joint session of India, Bangladesh on Sundarban issue. The two environmental ministers from Bangladesh side and Indian side met in Paris during the COP session in Paris. So that was the high point of cooperation. I don't know whether it's still continuing that way, but I think the cooperation between India and Bangladesh on this very important issue, which is the very heart of Bangladesh, particularly for Bangladesh, that's the only significant forest we have, and we have to protect it. And I hope we can cooperate on that front in future as well. Thank you very much and I'll thank Selim for organizing this session. And it's a great thing. We have done 3-4 days of continuous effort, and this will conclude today, hopefully with a big bang. Thank you, Selim.
Thank you, sir. It was an excellent elaboration from your end, and actually the way you explained to us, and we are fortunate to hear from you. And also I must thank these three presenters and Dr. Monish Hussein. I think it was an exciting session, and it actually contributed quite a lot to the discussion on what we are doing over the last 3.5 days. With this, I conclude the session and also invite you to the next session, which will start at 2:30 p.m. Bangladesh time. And thank you everyone.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.